#1 in the pound-for-pound rankings, the youngest UFC champion, the record holder for the number of successful title defenses, and a true prodigy in the world of professional MMA. All this is Jon Jones. But this legendary fighter also has a dark side. After more than a decade of defeating the top light heavyweight division, he still hasn't been able to overcome his own demons. Brilliant victories in his career are interspersed with scandals, spectacular knockouts with arrests, and successful defenses of the championship title with conflicts with the Anti-Doping Commission. This guy is constantly teetering on the brink of a foul, and every time he manages to rise and achieve new heights. What is the secret of the invincible bones? Let's try to figure it out. Jon Jones was born in July 1987 in Rochester, New York. His father was a pastor and dreamed of his son following in his footsteps. However, neither Jon nor his brothers Arthur or Chandler wanted to follow in their father's profession. The boys had been playing American football since they were young, and both later became professional footballers. Jon also spent many years on the football field. By the way, it was there that he got his famous nickname, Bones. Despite his athletic build, he was very tall and thin. Later, Jon gave up football and became seriously interested in wrestling. In fact, this guy never really liked being part of a team and sharing the winner's laurels with others. But on the tatami, the result depended only on him, and Jon finally felt like a real star. While studying in high school, Jones became the New York State champion. At the same time, his older sister Carmen died of brain cancer, and it was wrestling that helped him to survive this loss. It was only during training that Jon was distracted and forgot about his pain for at least a few hours. After graduating from high school, Jon went to college in Iowa. There, he also did not forget about his passion and later won the NJCAA National Wrestling Championship. Later, the future champion transferred to Morrisville State College, where he chose to major in criminology. However, Jones's dream of becoming a police officer was not to come true. Due to his active student life, he was forced to drop out. Jon got 2 of his girlfriends pregnant at once, so the young man had to forget about his education and urgently look for a job. Jones got a job as a bouncer at a local bar, but continued to devote all his free time to wrestling. But as it turned out, Jon was not only good at grappling, striking techniques were also surprisingly easy for him. He became seriously interested in MMA and soon decided to try himself in the professional arena. Jon Jones made his professional MMA debut at the Full Force Productions, Untamed 20, in April 2008. He defeated his first opponent by TKO in just 1.5 minutes. Over the next 2 weeks, Jon managed to knock out Brazilian Carlos Eduardo at the Battle Cage Extreme 4 event. Less than 3 months later, he scored 3 more early victories, gaining fame as a true MMA prodigy. Jon brutally smashed experienced punchers at the cage and caught professional grapplers in pain. And in his last fight on the local arena, he won the title of light heavyweight champion, according to the Battle Cage Extreme promotion. Rumors about Jones's phenomenal talent reached UFC managers, so 6 months after the start of his professional career, he traveled to Las Vegas to conquer the world's largest promotion. Jones first stepped into the cage under the auspices of the UFC in August 2008. Jon entered the cage on short notice, but this did not affect the outcome of the fight at all. He constantly pinned his opponent against the cage, smashing his face with powerful punches. Bones dominated the octagon throughout all 3 rounds, so the judges unanimously awarded the victory to him. That's how Jon got his first and not the last victory in the UFC. Over the next 6 months, Jon fought 3 more fights. He won a unanimous victory over UFC veteran Stefan Bonner and choked out Jake O'Brien, the author of the fastest knockout in the WEC, with a guillotine choke. However, Jon's 4th fight in the UFC ended in a controversial disqualification. While finishing off his opponent Matt Hamill on the ground, Jon hit a banned descending elbow. So even though Jones dominated from the first seconds of the fight, Hamill was awarded the victory. 3 months after this unfortunate and not real defeat, Jon had the opportunity to redeem himself in the eyes of the fans. Together with Brandon Vera, he headlined the main card of UFC Live, Vera vs. Jones. Jones, a well-known UFC knockout artist with an iron fist, instantly moved to the floor, immediately showing the veteran who was in charge in the cage. Later, he caught Brandon in a clinch, and having pinned him against the cage, performed another takedown. A few punches on the ground, and Vera panicked. He threw an illegal elbow strike to the head, which only strengthened Bones' resolve. One devastating elbow strike, and a series of heavy punches to finish the fight. Jon won another victory, and received his first knockout of the night bonus. After turning Belarusian Vladimir Matyushenko into a steak, finishing him with elbow strikes in just a minute and a half, Jones won his 5th UFC victory. Now he wanted to fight for the championship more than anything. And Dana White agreed, but only on the condition that Bones finishes his next 2 opponents early. Ryan Bader became the first obstacle on Jon's way to the belt. The winner of Tough Season 8 had a perfect 12-0 record and had just recently defeated Antonio Nogueira. So he could have caused problems for any of the lightweight division's representatives, but Jon was just not one of them. Jones and Bader met in the Octagon in February 2011 at UFC 126. From the very first seconds of the fight, it became clear that Bader had nothing to oppose the MMA prodigy Jones. Bones dominated both on the ground and in the stand-up, not allowing his opponent to prove himself. The fighters spent almost the entire first round on the canvas. Jones held the position perfectly and tried to apply a guillotine choke or close a Darce choke. So Ryan failed to hurt Jon, even though his fists seemed to be loaded with real dynamite. In the second 5-minute round, Jones took full advantage of his advantage in arm span. After spending half a round in the stand-up, Ryan, who was already afraid of Jones's floor like fire, unwillingly dragged his opponent to the canvas again, but he soon paid for it severely. Jon instantly took a dominant position, and in a few seconds, cut off Bader's oxygen with a guillotine. According to the plan, Jon was supposed to finish one more opponent before fighting for the title, but then an accident intervened in his fate. Rashad Evans, the first contender for the belt, got injured, and Jones was offered to replace him in a fight with the current light heavyweight champion, Mauricio Hua. The fight was to take place in just a month at UFC 128, and although there was little time to prepare, Jon simply could not miss his chance. Before his UFC debut, Shogun was a Pride star and once won the promotion's legendary Grand Prix. During his career, he fought twice as many fights as Jones, and Hua's striking power was proven by numerous technical knockouts. But unfortunately, Jones was not one of the scared ones. He had no trepidation at all in front of his reputable opponent, and once in the cage with him, he put all his ingenuity to work. As soon as the bell rang, Jon jumped out to meet Mauricio with a flying knee. Jones continued the fight in an equally aggressive manner. Half a minute into the first round, he dragged the champion to the ground, and looking for pain, managed to break his face with elbow strikes. In the stand-up, Jones kept Hua at a distance with side kicks and occasionally caught him in a clinch, forcing the Brazilian to endure hard knees to the body. In the second round, Jon continued to chase the Brazilian around the octagon like a little boy.
Distance with that left hand. That's right when he wanted to charge in on the land to try to hit him.
When Hua himself initiated an attack, Jon and made him regret it bitterly.
It is professional elbows to the spot. Jon Jones is not a left dive under with that up here. Coming in, man.
By the third round, Shogun was barely standing up, so Jon just had to finish the job. In the middle of the round, Bones once again pinned his opponent against the cage and hit a final combination of an uppercut and a knee to the head. The defeated champion fell to the canvas, and Jon raised his hands in victory. He was now the king of this division. In August 2011, Jones defended his belt for the first time against former champion Quinton Jackson. Next up was Lyoto Machida, who had previously also topped the light heavyweight division rankings. Defending a belt from the encroachments of its former owner is never easy, and although Jones was considered a total favorite on the eve of the fight, Machida still managed to create a lot of problems for him in the octagon. This fight took place at UFC 140 in December 2011 and lasted only 2 rounds. The first of which Jones, to the surprise of the audience, gave to his opponent. Machida took Bones by surprise with his lightning-fast hand combinations. He easily closed the distance and stunned Jon with powerful crosses and hooks. In the second round, the Brazilian didn't slow down at all, so Jones had to figure out a way to stop the tireless dragon on the fly. He tried to catch his opponent in a clinch, but Lyoto constantly escaped from the grip. But soon Jon managed to subdue the former champion with a counter left hook. This punch turned the tide of the fight. Lyoto staggered back, and Jon pressed him against the cage and closed the guillotine. Machida did not want to give up, proudly choosing to lose consciousness. This is how Jones proved for the second time that he rightfully holds the championship belt. In April 2012, Jones stepped into the octagon with Rashad Evans, breaking his long-standing promise to never lay hands on his former mentor. Rashad had been training Jon since the very first day at Jackson Wink MMA Academy back in 2009. He knew his mentee's style perfectly well, but even that didn't save Evans from defeat. Their fight became the main event of UFC 145 and gave the audience a real treat. It's not often that you see two former friends trying to knock the wind out of each other. In the first round, Jones did not change his habits and kept his opponent at a considerable distance. It was extremely difficult for Rashad to reach Jon from such a distance, while Bones himself had no trouble working on his opponent with numerous hooks and leg kicks. In the second round, Evans continued to work. He had no choice because Jones was the star of the octagon, and he was the only one. All of Rashad's attempts to provoke the champion and pull the blanket over himself only brought him losses. In particular, the end of the round, Evans threw hard elbow strikes, one of which almost sent Jones to the canvas. And in the final 5 minutes of the second round, he jumped out to meet his opponent with a flying knee and finished the attack with a powerful right hook that landed on Evans' temple, the sound of the bell. The remaining 3 rounds were a real euphoria for Jon. He was enjoying himself, dominating his former teacher. Rashad, on the other hand, looked more and more confused with each round and less dared to counterattack. In the last seconds of the fight, Jones seemed to decide to mock his opponent by trying a jumping guard on him. Chasing Evans around the octagon for the entire 25 minutes of the fight, Jon deservedly won the favor of all of the judges. Bones also defeated the only opponent who knew his style to the smallest detail. Over the next year, Jones defended his title twice more. First, he defeated light heavyweight legend Vitor Belfort with a key lock in the 4th round, and then he defeated Chael Sonnen by TKO, who was not inferior to Jones in impudence and proved to be a rather difficult opponent for him. Having finished with the list of former champions, Jones got a fresh contender for the belt, who had suffered only 1 defeat in his 4-year career in the UFC. Alexander Gustafsson was also known for finishing most of his opponents in the first round, so the main event of UFC 165 promised to be a real clash of titans. The fast and dynamic Gustafsson, barely being face-to-face with Jones, showed his titleist that it would not be easy to deal with him. Jones, as always, tried to keep his distance using side kicks and launched attacks from afar. However, it didn't work with Alex. He was almost the same height as Jones and also had a considerable arm span. The Swede attacked the champion with jabs to the body, adding hooks to the head, and in the first round managed to sign on Jones's face, cutting his eyebrow. Gustafsson also pulled off a successful takedown, which no one else has managed to do with Jones. Instead, Bones, either by accident or on purpose, got his finger right in Gustafsson's eye. In the second 5 minutes, Jones was already starting to panic, as his opponent was outplaying him, even as he was working as the second seed. But Jon's shots did not always hit the target. Jones managed to equalize his chances only in the fourth round. The champion bombarded Alex with middle and high kicks, thus avoiding his heavy punches. Then things went even better. By the end of the round, Jon managed to hit several juicy spinning elbows, and then, holding his opponent against the cage, he added a knee to the head. The last round was completely taken by Jones. Although Gustafsson gave him some unforgettable episodes in the first minute, the challenger's enthusiasm did not last long. In the middle of the round, Jones scored a successful takedown, and then the fight continued according to his rules. Bones stunned Alex several times with high kicks and hard hooks, making the judge's job easier. Jon won the fight, but later he admitted that he considered this fight the hardest in his career. The incredible confrontation between the UFC's Golden Boy and the Tough Viking won the Fight of the Year 2023 award and entered the promotion's Hall of Fame. And Jon defended his championship title for the 6th time, setting a new division record. After defeating Glover Teixeira, who had not been defeated in 9 years before meeting Jones, Bones got Daniel Cormier as his opponent. A member of the Olympic wrestling team and former winner of the Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix, the UFC believed that he was the perfect contender for the belt, and also a real challenge for Jones. The fight was scheduled for January 2015 as the main event of UFC 182. However, the fight between Jon and Daniel began even before they entered the cage. Verbal altercations and even a fight at one of the pre-fight press conferences heated up the public's interest to a boiling point. So, when the day of the fight finally came, the atmosphere between the rivals was so tense you could cut it with a knife. The fight began with a dynamic exchange of blows, soaked in mutual hatred. But then Jones took his opponent to the ground, as if trying to prove to Daniel that he shouldn't rely on his advantage in the fight. After this episode, Jones completely switched to working in the left guard, keeping Cormier at a distance. He hit single punches with his hands, mixing them with powerful high kicks. In the second round, Daniel figured out Jon's tactics and began to attack him, sharply closing the distance. When Bones welcomed his opponent with hooks and elbows, Cormier tied his hands in a clinch and worked his knees, trying to tire the champion out. The third 5-minute period was memorable for powerful leg kicks, as well as Jones's favorite, albeit banned, finger in the eye move. Having been fouled, he confused Daniel and took full advantage of it. With numerous takedowns and holds at the cage, he sucked the last of his opponent's strength like a vampire. In the final round, Cormier managed to return the favor by landing an amplitude throw. However, this did not have much of an impact on the overall picture of the fight. The judges unanimously gave the victory to the current champion. Jones defended his belt for the 8th time and had no intention of stopping there. The second time the fierce rivals met was 2.5 years later, and this time Cormier was the champion and Jon was a contender for the belt. Bones lost his championship title due to problems with the law. He had previously been involved in various stories related to drugs and drunk driving. This time, however, a pregnant woman was injured because of Jon. The champion miraculously got off with a suspended sentence, but lost the title, the UFC's best light heavyweight, and his reputation was severely tarnished. Having won the interim belt in a fight with Ovince St. Preux, Jon was caught doping and lost even that, So the chance to meet Cormier for the second time was like a lifeline that could bring Jones back to his glorious past. Traditionally, the fundamental fight between Bones and DC was preceded by numerous quarrels and tons of trash talk. However, when the rivals entered the cage at the head of the UFC 214 tournament, everything finally fell into place. An emotional exchange of punches in the opening round promised the audience an incredible show. Jon even lost his mouth guard from one of Daniel's hard uppercuts. However, Jones quickly got his bearings and began to pour punches into his opponent's body from the left stand, occasionally distracting Cormier with hooks and crosses to the head. Noticing this, Daniel also began to alternate between different levels of strikes, knocking his opponent for a loop. In the second round, DC hit Jones's head with more and more charged punches. Instead, Jones mixed level punches with leg kicks, trying to disorient his opponent and punch a hole in his defense. The third 5-minute round was Cormier's last as champion. Jones made a jewel-like high kick, after which DC staggered and began to retreat. But Bones didn't want to let go of his prey. A powerful left hook and a flying knee sent Daniel crashing to the canvas. And Jon finished the job with a hard finish. Jones regained his belt, but his triumph was short-lived. A month later, doping was found in the champion's blood, and the results of the fight with DC were canceled, stripping him of the title once again. Having lost the belt 3 times in a row without a single loss, Jones set a kind of anti-record. However, he did not want to say goodbye to the championship title forever. So, a year and a half later, when Jones managed to get his reputation back on his knees and come to an agreement with the Anti-Doping Commission, he entered the cage again. The King's next comeback took place at UFC 232, where he met for the second time with another of karmic rivals, Alexander Gustafsson. Since their last meeting, the tough Swede hadn't been sitting idle. He'd managed to compete for the belt with Daniel Cormier and score several convincing victories over the division's tops. And in his last fight, Alex knocked out Glover Teixeira. Jones had repeatedly mentioned that the fight with Gustafsson was perhaps the most difficult test of his career. But this time, there was a vacant belt at stake, which Cormier refused to give up after moving up to heavyweight. So the game was worth the candle. As soon as the fight started, Jon was almost immediately fouled by an illegal knee to the groin. But then he picked himself up and started hitting Gustafsson's legs with low kicks, occasionally landing painful middle kicks to the liver.
Usual Gustafsson continuing.
After working the first round as the second seed, Alex decided to improve the situation in the second 5 minutes, and at first he did well. Almost every shot of the Swede hit the target. However, soon Jones's numerous low kicks, which he was constantly testing Gustafsson's legs with, began to take their toll. It was becoming increasingly difficult for Alex to move around the octagon and avoid the former champion's punches. The third segment began with several accurate hooks by Jones, which made the Viking let his guard down. Jon took advantage of this and scored a takedown. After pacifying his opponent with a hard elbow, he took back mount and finished him in a merciless finish. The light heavyweight champion's belt was once again on Jones's waist, the belt that had been slipping out of his hands for the past 4 years.
Far out that he can't try to land all his hands, which is the problem.
After beating Anthony Smith and winning his first victory by split decision over Thiago Santos, Jones was given Dominic Reyes as his opponent. At first, Bones underestimated his future opponent. Although Reyes' 12-fight unbeaten streak spoke for itself, he had wins over Ovince St. Preux and Jared Cannonier. In his last fight, Dominic knocked out former middleweight champion Chris Weidman in just 2 minutes. Mocking Reyes at every press conference, Jones could not imagine what awaited him in the octagon. This fight became the main event of UFC 247, and in its first second, Dominic stunned Jon with a lightning cross. Then the events unfolded even more dramatically. Reyes blocked Jones's takedown, broke the distance, and fired a left high kick. He didn't hesitate to respond to all of Bones' attacks, and in the middle of the round, he even managed to land the champion on the canvas for a second with a charged left cross. In the last minute of the first round, Dominic chased Jon all over the octagon, not giving him a second's rest. Despite the fact that the first round was convincingly won by the challenger, Jones did not lose his temper. He began to press his opponent. However, for every high kick or swinging hook of the champion, Reyes responded with a protracted counterattack, bombarding Jon with numerous punches. By the third 5-minute mark, Jones had already leveled the odds and began to gradually take the initiative. Moreover, the opponent, for whom this was his first championship fight in his career, was already losing strength. In the last 2 rounds, control of the situation was completely taken over by Jon.
Nice bunk wires. Let's see how he handles it. That was a beautiful elbow.
He stretched his fists well, breaking Reyes' face and testing his ribs, not to mention the numerous leg kicks and elbow strikes that left bloody marks on Dominic's face. And although Reyes got a second wind in the last minutes of the fight, he was unable to change the judges' minds. Jones won a unanimous decision and once again proved that he is rightfully ranked first on the top division. Having defended his light heavyweight championship belt once again, Jon later gave it up due to financial disputes with Dana White. He put his career on hold for 3 years and returned only after receiving an offer to fight for the heavyweight belt. The title fight with the division's top-ranked Ciryl Gane headlined the UFC 285 card and became one of the most anticipated events of the year. Despite the fact that it was Jon's first fight at 265 pounds, most bookmakers favored him. The fans expected their favorite to win a bright and early victory, and Jon fulfilled their wishes. Ciryl Gane certainly knew that he was considered an outsider and seemed to be quite nervous about facing a much more experienced opponent. In the very first seconds of the fight, he showed his tension by throwing a leg kick to Jones's groin. This foul made Bones very angry because after the referee's pause, he began to actively press his opponent, completely capturing the center of the octagon. Already in the second minute of the fight, Bones took Cyryl's back and moved him to the floor. Gane managed to get up, but not for long. Jon pinned him against the fence and closed the guillotine. In a few seconds, Gane surrendered, and Jones mounted the cage. Celebrating the victory, the King was reborn. Jon Jones kicked down the door to the heavyweight division and immediately became its leader. It seems that the most talented fighter in the history of MMA, having changed his weight category, decided to start a new life, to cleanse his karma in front of his fans and finally stop the endless stream of scandals that has brought Jon down more than once. Will he succeed? We'll see. We can only hope the 3 consecutive belt losses have taught Jones to appreciate his own achievements, and the title of the world's strongest heavyweight will remain with him for many years to come. If you enjoyed this video, please put a like, leave your comments, and press the bell icon to avoid missing the next video. And if you watch this video without a subscription, sign up for the channel right now. We'll see you in the next video.